the bygones, illuminate morons. Have you seen it on TV? I hate to say it, but I told you so. I hate to say it, but I told you so. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I hate to say it, but I told you so. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Another hand inside the puppet of an ass, falling down on the ground, and he's crying, he's your savior. With his box crying babies who will slit you and guilt you, the neon enticer injecting the flavor. I hate to say it, but I told you so. I hate to say it, but I told you so. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I hate to say it, but I told you so. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'd hate to say it, but I told you so. I'd hate to say it, but I told you so. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'd hate to say it, but I told you so. I'd hate to say it, but I told you so. I'd hate to say it, but I told you so. I'd hate to say it, but I told you so. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We build the myth inside your shopping cart and all the hearts of everyone you see.
Woo! What a great song. I Told You So. That is by our guest that we have on the line. Let me get myself turned up here. And we're going to read a little bio right off his page. It's on edroman.net. And this is about Ed. He is right out of the gate. He has a freshman release in 2000, Special Ed in the Musically Challenged. Ed Roman defined his paradigm with inventive, infectious tunes that shook one's marrow and stirred the spirit. I can agree with that. This guy is unique. 3 follow-up releases with SEMC continue to mesmerize and astonish the music with music that both kissed and prodded, seduced and challenged, hypnotized and enlightened. And we're going to skip a little bit down to 2014 with Letters from High Latitudes, a homage to his Ontario, Canada home. Ed Roman has done it again, creating an earthy, funky, and magical mix of music to seduce the listener's ear. An accomplished musician, Ed performs 90% of the instruments on his albums. Wow. Recording drums, bass guitars, organs, vocals, and even sitar. I'd like to know what that is. The sound is rounded out with help from some of the top Canadian session musicians like Dave Patel on drums and Mike Freedman on electric guitars. Sit back, get mellow, and listen to this truly skillful musician weave a tapestry of enchantment from an electric fabric of musical styles. And let's welcome our guest, Mr. Ed Roman. How are you doing today, Ed?
Ooga booga, I am good.
Ed, let's get to know a little bit about you, and let's let our listeners know a little bit about you, because that's certainly a pretty unique style and the music you play. Man, I like it, and I was going to ask you, what kind of music is that, or what would you define it as?
Well, it's dude, it's such an interesting question, a question I'm asked so often because there's so many different sort of genres that show themselves in the albums that I make, and songs change from tune to tune as far as genre. As you might hear a jazz tune, or you might hear a folk number, or you might hear a country piece, or It doesn't really matter to me. The point is that, writing is always, and that's the other thing where it kind of ties hand in hand to the writing aspect question, where it's like, well, the ideas start to present themselves in certain ways because of emotions. And sometimes we latch on to different genres of music because we like them. But at the same time, too, it also, shuts us off to many ideas, feelings, new ideas that, may sit outside of the normal realm of things. I started writing music as a necessity. We grew up in a very charmed sort of existence. I always refer to it kind of like a Norman Rockwell painting mixed with sort of Dazed and Confused of the 1970s. It was a very sort of charmed existence. We didn't have transportation. We didn't have a bus system. We lived in a very small hamlet in a rural farming community. And we had ourselves as friends, as close people that, we built forts together. We did all these kinds of things. But the other thing that we really were hot for was music and challenging each other musically, whether it be writing a song or playing together in bands, competitiveness that was going on with bands. So that really fueled this sort of kind of passion for it. And not only that, a lot of the people at that time that, in terms of aspiring to other musicians, had a lot of this sort of heady behavior to them. So as a person, you were kind of driven by it. I know we were talking before offline, we were talking about the diversity inside of music, and that's the thing about music is that if we put things in boxes sometimes, although it's necessary, we also create prejudices. And I always think of other people in the past that have dealt with these kinds of issues even in their own community. Look at Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was one of those guys who kind of didn't fit into two different categories at the same time because of, a race and the style of music that he played. He played predominantly to a white audience, and he was getting a lot of pressure from the black community in the United States about different stuff. And here was also a guy who was secretly listening to Bob Dylan records and loved Bob Dylan. He would, people would say, why are you listening to that stuff? And he'd be like, but listen to what he's saying, And I think that that's what turns me on about writing the music, the albums that I put out, is that I'm always trying to say something about what's happening now. You said something beautiful. You were paying attention to what was going on in St. Louis and all the craziness that's going on. Well, that's fodder for songs, and it even has been in the past. All through history, people have written about stuff. So you're going to hear a lot about that in my music. In the biography you're reading, it said, well, some of my music might make you feel uncomfortable, but I'm not doing it to try to piss people off. I'm doing it because I care, and I'm trying to get them to think and talk about stuff that we don't always talk about.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I this image of Rammstein, I don't know if you remember that German group, hard rock group Rammstein, but when they came out, the first time I seen them on MTV, they had World War II veterans on there and talking with them, and they didn't like Rammstein just for the fact of who they were, Yeah, and that kind of is kind of what your statement. They don't like it because of something, but when you listen to it, it's like, man, that's pretty neat and that's pretty good, and when I sit here, it's like, I don't know who the Ed Roman is, but I start listening to the music, and it's like, I can really get into this. This is
thank you. And
this is what I enjoy,
because it also has a lot to do with what we're exposed to, and the thing is that there's such a leviathan, a corporate machine that has more dictation over what we see in the mainstream of things, that it's hard to kind of sort through all that sometimes. So I appreciate that, because I try to write from a point of honesty, and I'm always trying to think about, the right way to approach a subject, because other people too, and you're from St. Louis or in that area, so it's like, a big fan of mine is George Norrie, and he's from St. Louis, and here he's always trying to, as a host, even on his show, even though there might be diametrically opposed opinions from night to night, he's still trying to get through to the information to get it out there. And I think that's the most important thing to do. So, like the last tune that you played of mine, I Told You So, I'm talking about kind of weird, dark stuff, who builds the myths inside our shopping carts and all the hearts of everyone you see. You know, and then those same people like buy up the bygones and illuminate morons. You've seen it on TV, and it's kind of a hard statement to take. And I told you so, you know, has got, even though I'm saying I told you so. Look, like all this crazy stuff is going on. There's a happy chordal structure that's kind of happening behind it, but yet at the same time I pose and pause at a moment on a flat 5 chord to create this dissonance. So I go, you know, it's a sad moment, though, inside of this happiness of us massively consuming things on a regular basis, but without thinking about the consequence of where they come from or how it gets to us. So that's a big part of where that tune comes from. Even the political aspect that's in that song, in the second verse.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I'm reading in your bio. It says you ask us, everyone, to glimpse into the world from your vantage point, offering up your vision and helping to point out the areas that need tidying. That's a great thing, because the last thing on your bio, it says you can't help but smile. And as you were talking, and I was smiling listening to what you're saying, because I understand that. That makes a lot of sense to me, you know, that those words you were saying about the song I told you. That, wow. That's kudos for your style. Wow.
Well, yeah, and you know, even with other things that I've written in the past, like I think that's the most important thing, that there's so much information out there, and there's so much coming at us all the time, that it's even hard for us to have it sit around in the old noggin to contemplate it and then to, you know, utilize it somehow for good or bad, whether it is good or bad, and talk about it. I'm more, you know, like I spent a whole bunch of time in the West Indies fortunately in the last 10 years, as a guest in some places, and also just trying to take some time off. And Jamaica was a place where, you know, because I left the hotel, I spent time with friends, family, had dinner at people's homes. I went to Kingston. People told me, don't go to Kingston. I was in Port Royal, District 3, playing my acoustic guitar on the street to people. And I quickly realized that there's so much fear that exists in people, and it's really pumped at us from day to day, too. I mean, we consume because of the fear. And at the same time, when you relinquish that and you have conversations with people, like there was a couple guys I met that were farmers. And, for instance, they had no idea about, you know, Monsanto and the suicide genes that are in seeds. That, you know, and when I had this conversation with them, and their curiosity was sparked because, you know, they had mentioned to me, well, we've been trying to save corn seeds, but it doesn't work. And I mentioned this, and then I find out that there's a government-sponsored seed bank, just like they're trying to do here in Canada, you know, that's giving farmers seeds and have to pay into it. But you can't save your own. They're horrified. I don't like having those conversations with people but it's the passing of the information. And I know after talking to Woody or other people that I was there with, they'll go and talk to other people about it. And that's the most important thing, that language still has that potency on a kinetic level to be able to get that information out there, to say this is wrong, or this is good, or I'm going to stay clear of it, or I'm going to embrace this. So, you know, that's the most important thing, and music still has that ability. It still has that way to stir the subconscious into a way, because it still keeps motivating you. How many times have you been in the car and you infectiously listening to the same song over and over again because the message, the mood, all of those kinds of things fuel you? So it even has almost sometimes, you know, more potency to it because of the way it's illustrated to the people.
That's a great point that you say that, because when you said that, I started thinking of the great Michael Jackson and some of his songs, and you listen to his lyrics, and people say, no, he's telling a message in his music if you really listen to it, and he's got some of the greatest messages that I've heard in some of his music. I was like, wow, I appreciated the tunes. I was just going to say, I listened to the tunes and hear the music. Yeah, that beat is great, but as I got older, I started appreciating, understanding that, listen to what they're saying, and you'll really understand what they're talking and why they're singing about it, because it's about what was on his mind or about the cause that he loved. You know, he was a great humanitarian, though he might have had his own issues. He was able to sing about them, and that was great. And I was going to ask, is that kind of how you write your music as well?
Well, yeah, you know, like life is it. like living life and the ability to be able to react on what's just happened, whether it be good or bad. And I know so many of us from day to day where we have a moment to think on our own about something that's just happened. Don't always take the time to write down our thoughts about it, because life moves so fast. We're communicating it through social networking, how we feel, or sharing pictures and photos of things that we do. But in an artistic fashion, that's more like literarily painting a picture that in more ways has potency than just describing the actual subject matter. Because it's what you're talking about with Michael. I mean, there might be something that, on a superficial level that we see it for, but the true allegory of the music, of the language and why it was written may be still unknown to some people. And some artists are very, secretive about what those things are. Other artists are very open about it because they want people to, not only embrace the song but understand the meaning behind the language. So, and I think that, in this day and age, like I've seen some artists in the past that will refuse to take a stance on certain things because the subject matter is very delicate. So I think that is also can be a very dangerous thing, because that's one thing all through history that art has shown us, whether it be music, poetry, painting, ceramics, dance. There are always these illustrations of moments of time, good or bad. Herbie Hancock, God, I love Herbie's my man, but he once wrote on the back of Jocko's album, he said, the definition of an artist is one who has the ability to fuse their life with the rhythm of the times. And in some cases, it can be a beautiful thing, and in some cases it can be something that's hard to swallow, because that artist or that person is trying to illustrate something that's really important in the culture at that moment for future generations to see, and just because there's the learning experience happening in the moment. It's integral for artists to do those kinds of things.
It is. That's awesome. And I kind of want to ask you, because there's something that I've seen that it says 90% of your instruments are done by you. You made me think of that guy. I don't know. You've probably seen him, the piano guy. I think that's what they call him on the YouTube. Oh. He does all that stuff, and he makes videos. And is that what kind of you? You haven't seen him? Oh, well, man, this guy
I mentioned Stevie Wonder before, and I grew up listening to Stevie and reading about the fact that, he's playing drums and keyboard, bass, and clav, and singing and doing those kind of people really drove me as a young person. And even other people like Mingus, like Charles Mingus, and here's another person that's tied into that ideology of musical sort of, theology, that you shouldn't have a prejudice behind music. And everybody refers to Mingus as a jazz bass player. But Mingus was like a Stravinsky of his time. I mean, the guy sat down with paper and pen and composed some of the most incredible music for 50 and 60-piece orchestras.
Yeah.
And so aside from that, there's so much more going on in artists, so why not embrace instruments that way? And here's the thing. As a kid, because, there's an old guitar in the house. There's an old piano in the house. Somebody left a drum kit because of a rehearsal. There's always that option to interplay and experiment. And I think that many musicians that I know are, multi-talented. They do these things. But it's also very humbling to try to express yourself on an instrument that you haven't spent 35 years of your life trying to master. And to me, you never master your instrument until you leave the planet, because you're always learning. I think any good musician out there is always trying to learn something. And by consequently pushing yourself somewhere else, you've taken a break from that zone that you've been in your own sort of instrument and what you've been working. But you come back to it after that with a fresh interpretation, because the other instruments have been showing you things in other ways that not like you were getting stale, but it's just a fresh taste, a different, like I said, interpretation of the moment.
I appreciate the fact that you have all the other instruments because I have friends, they sit there and I myself I love classical music. I grew up with it. My mom was a fine arts major from KU here, the Kansas University here, and I heard the piano all the time. And of classical music was something I heard, and people always said, how come you listen to that music? How do you? It's like, first of all, you're going to complain. I'd like to see you go and get 100 instruments together and make the noise that they do. And he just looked at me, and they never thought of it that way, you know. It's just like, they don't just do that, you know. It takes a lot of work.
I played in a concert band for like 6 years, and you have an 80-piece orchestra, and you have all those people working, breathing as one unit. It's pretty incredible experience how insignificant or how important the piece might be, you know, in terms of the instrument itself, whether it's first violin or somebody playing a timpani part. It's incredibly complex. And I know what you mean, because I used to get poo-pooed by a lot of friends for the same reason, because I fell in love with classical music at a very young age because a lot of my family listened to it. So it wasn't something that I ever shut off. And it's also something like I had to like play classical music and fall in love with it to be able to get into school to study it. So Gavotti en Rondeau, the Bach piece, I had originally transcribed from cello to my electric bass to get into Humber College. So I love, you know, like I said, I might be my best friend and my worst enemy when it comes to the diversity of music that I like.
Oh, you're your own worst critic.
Yeah.
So let's talk. So Ed, let's talk a little bit about the album that you have and the music that you just released.
That's a lucky 13 on that one.
Oh, all right. And how long did it take you with getting all this music together for you to get it pieced together?
It's hard to say, you know, because I'm always writing. So, like, I have, like, an umpteen amount of other songs in a basket. But, it's just like when you feel like a dinner's, you know, your potatoes, carrots, whatever you're going to put on the grill, you know, you start to see this is going to be a dinner. And the music itself is the same way. When I feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's right, I'll say to Mike Jack, who I work with all the time, Mike, come on, let's start doing some recording. And over the course of about 6 months, we'll work in the studio every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes once a week, and we put it all together. And then over the course of about 2 months, there's mixing and mastering and everything that goes on. So the recording process could take anywhere between, 8 to 10 months or even a year. But the writing process, like I say, is ongoing. And once everything feels right, I put it in that little box, and define it for people. And it's called Letters from High Latitudes because I live at the second highest elevation in Ontario. The highest is just up the road from my house in a little town called Dundalk. And I like the idea, Stevie Wonder, till I reach the highest ground. I'm the fool on the hill writing songs, and it's the perspective looking at, like I say, outside of the box, or I could not see the forest for the trees in front of me factor. We're also inundated with speed, time, catching up with stuff, the latest this, the latest that. Before you know it, we've had little to no time to sort of spiritually and sort of, relax in some way to ingest all of this stuff. So I'm writing about it. And if that means that you get the time to sort of maybe put the music on and listen to it and it gets you thinking, that's a good thing. If it makes you feel good, that's a good thing. If it makes you talk more to people, that's a good thing. So, that's what I'm hoping for with it.
I think it's a good thing. I really enjoy the music. I'm high strung, and when I listen to you, it's like I can't be high strung listening to this music. This is great. This puts me where I need to be, and it makes me think, and that's the key.
Well, and I think that's without I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think that's what's happening. I think that people are getting a lot of the gist of what you're talking about. And right now, I'm doing a little bragging, but I'm up for 6 different awards in the U.S. right now for writing.
Oh, heck yeah, awesome.
Which is a huge accomplishment, an AMG award, which is the Artistic Music Guild. And that's based on your contribution to American culture and art culture itself. And then an entertainment music award as well too. That's the IMEA, the International Music Entertainment Association. And the album is up for Best Album of the Year, Contemporary Album of the Year. and I'm up for Best Male Vocalist of the Year as well, which is, I'm just thrilled, you know. And it's ironic, you know, I've been peddling what I do and doing what I do in Canada right across from coast to coast for a long time, and it's now, once again, that I'm over the border, and more of the American culture seems to embrace what I do and what I talk about. Maybe I'm inundated with more American culture and thinking than I think about, and maybe I'm reflecting a lot more of that than I actually think as a writer. So
maybe
it makes me feel really good.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about these awards and everything that you got going on, because you work with a great guy, Michael Stover.
Michael is one of the guys that when you talk to him in person, you know you're talking to somebody that's forthright and honest and only comes shooting from the hip. He cares about the people he talks to. So often I'll get, you know, pre-conversation with somebody before a show, and they'll say, you know, gee, your manager, he's such a nice guy. You know, and if he's saying something because he thinks he's, you know, needs to kick somebody in the butt, he'll do it in a good way that's almost like a poetic kind of way that makes you once again think. I mean, he's an artist himself. He understands what's going on, and he pays an incredible amount of attention to his artists. So I feel like I'm a part of a family. I can't thank him enough for all the hard work that he's done.
Boy, I can tell you, I appreciate him, because I've got to come and meet some of his great artists like you, Ed, and the work that you guys are doing, and it's opening my eyes to stuff that, you know, you generally don't get to hear unless you really start paying attention to it. And that's what's great about this, is I've gotten to hear different artists and different people that it's like, man, I am so glad, Ed, that I get to speak with you and learn a little bit about you. And you're actually from Canada, right? Is that where you said up there?
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm noticing your name, and I'm also noticing the name of the show, like some native guy. Like my father, like when they first immigrated here, lived on Scugog Island, and their farm was right next to the reserve. So some of the first people that, you know, were friends to us that welcomed us to Canada were actually the Scugog Island people, the Indian people.
Oh, wow.
So when I saw your name and the name of the show, and I'm like, oh, very cool. I'm very up on Aboriginal rights and the stuff that's going on. So I'm like, we'll get along if this is all part of the equation.
Yeah, we can get along, but I don't think a lot of people get along with me, because I'm kind of a little bit.
Well, you know what? You got a great show. You're the right person to be running this show at the same time, because you ask great questions. You're very knowledgeable. You're into music, and that's an important factor. It's like if you're on a show and nobody knows how to ask questions or asking obvious stuff, it sort of makes for strange fodder in conversation, you know.
Well, I don't want to just sit here. It's like, well, Ed, tell us a little bit about yourself and let you talk for half an hour.
Yeah, right.
It does. It kind of wears our guests out. I've done that a few times, and I've grown from that period.
Well, that's the whole deal. You want to know about the person and why they do what it is that they do. Your average television show, like if we watch How It's Made or something like that, it's like we're fascinated by the process. So it's good talking about that and how everything evolves. It's very, very, very cool, man.
It is, and I'm glad that we got to talk with you. And Ed, I hate to tell you this, but that was the quickest half hour I've ever been through in my life. And I want to. We're going to end our show with "Coming My Way." But before we let you go, Ed, let's let everybody know where they can find you, or they can get a hold of your music as well.
Sure, you can come by edroman.net, and you can see in my social networking buttons, you can find me at Special Ed Roman on Twitter and Ed Roman Music on Facebook. If you want, what's really cool is you can go to iTunes, free app, the Ed Roman app. You can download that for your Android phone or your iPhone, and that always keeps you up to date with all my shows, what I'm doing, new photos, videos, all sorts of stuff like that. So that's a good way to do it, too, and I'm in your pocket. Coming My Way is one of those good-feeling songs that is sort of like a mantra. You know, from day to day, we're all trudging through difficult things. Everybody's fighting their own little personal battles, but you got to keep looking on the bright side that things will eventually come your way. It doesn't matter what it is, how great or how small the victory might be.
working every day. I've been waiting for the sunshine. It's been coming my way. And it's been coming my way. I've been dancing at a hold down, lost it to the fight with folk. I've been sipping on the moonshine, I've been telling dirty jokes. And it's been coming my way. And it's been coming my way. Tell me, is it leaving, deceiving, relieving me anyway? I'm hard of hearing, believing, the healing, it happens every day. And it's been coming my way. I could write you out a postcard, I could tell you all the news. I've been fighting off the demons, there's no way that I can lose.